Okay, guys, so welcome everyone. Another wonderful webinar within the framework of the weekly fasting group. Now, before we delve into our subjects today, I just, especially for those who are watching later on YouTube, just want to tell that the weekly fasting group is a big online community of people from virtually all over the world. And the only common denominator of this group is that we abstain from food for 24 hours every week between Friday and Saturday. So there is certain time of abstaining from food, and it's really open-minded. Some people do it in the form of dry fasting, water fasting, juices, teas, liquids, whatever feels right to you. And beyond that, we have people coming from different religious and spiritual backgrounds, different dietary backgrounds, the whole range, in fact, of dietary backgrounds. And we just coexist in peace and harmony and just learn from each other. And every Friday, we try to organize different webinars with influential speakers on different subjects such as nutrition, fasting, spirituality, lifestyle. So people who have interesting healing stories. And yeah, so that's the concept more or less, and it's free, you know. And so if you're watching this video later on, and if those ideas appeal to you, then you will find my WhatsApp number below this video. This group operates on WhatsApp. My name is Arik. I moderate this group. You're welcome to send me your name, your willingness to join this group, your request, and I'll happily add you. So that was a little bit of a background. Now, today we have with us Lee Copus. Hello, Lee.
How you doing?
We will talk about Lee's healing story. Now, as I said, we spoke a few days ago that it's not a formal interview. It's just a friendly chat,
Yes.
So we'll talk.
There's no job involved.
Yeah, for about 20 minutes, half an hour. Then we will open the mics. People will ask questions. Then we'll continue. And we'll basically have fun.
Cool.
So, Lee, now, before we delve into our main subject, we spoke about carnivore diet and your colon condition, stuff like that. But I wanted to ask you, a few days ago, you completed the documentary for your YouTube channel about about the corruption in our medical system. Now, I think I'm asking about that because regardless of the, let's say, dietary background of a person coming to this group, I think all of us pretty much agree that the system is corrupted, and in most cases, we don't need to expect something good coming out of there. In most cases, even though there are certain good points. Now, could you tell us about your documentary? What were your thinking behind that? What is the concept?
Sure. So basically, I usually compile clips together to make these documentaries. So people I trust in the space, good authorities that speak a lot of sense. They're not in it for money; they're in it purely for health. And with what I've learned, this is how I'm like, yeah, they have veracity in what they say. That's great. If it's not accurate and helpful, I don't include it. So I'm 100% about truth, and I just want to help. So the idea behind it is that most people's default setting is, I'm sick, I'm in trouble, I'm scared, I'm going to do whatever the doctor says. And that's their first port of call. They go down to the doctor. And I think a lot of people have been programmed now to expect a magic pill for absolutely everything. The truth is there is no magic pill. 99% of all medication will never cure. I say 99% because on the rarity you have like a infection or something, antibiotics, as long as you haven't overused them, they can get you out of trouble. And they make some great painkillers, but these medications are very toxic. They're very inflammatory. And they just purely treat your symptoms. So you may feel better. You may feel like, wow, I'm on track to healing and mending, and I'm on the right path here. And I think for a long time, and some people even, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, they're getting chronically sick for the first time, and they have no reason to not trust their doctor. And it's not that I believe that the doctors know what they're doing. I think that they have been programmed themselves. Like, they believe that they are helping and that this is the right protocols. You've come in with this symptom. this is the number you've reached. I need to prescribe this much of this medication, for example. And basically 99% of those medications are only going to make you more sick. They're not going to cure you. They don't actually ever cure your problems. They may treat your symptoms and address your symptoms, but most of the time, this is actually when you begin your downward spiral with your health, because you've gone to the doctor, now you're taking one medication. That means that it's causing inflammation somewhere else in the body because it's stopping something that your body's doing that they see is dangerous. But what the body's doing is everything that it's, to help you. It's trying to keep you alive. It's a repair and maintenance system permanently all the time we're alive. They deem certain things, we need to stop that. So we'll give you this drug that causes inflammation somewhere else. And then 2 years later, they're on 2 medications, 5 years later on 6 medications. And these things accumulate. And I think the message really is that we need to prevent these things from happening by doing the right things first, rather than, going, oh, it's not going to happen to me. It eventually does, because we're all going to get sick, one day. And when that day comes, to not think that you can just go down to the doctor, come out with some drugs, and you're all going to be okay. It just doesn't work like that. It's not that simple. So I wanted to get that out there because obviously I've been failed. I feel like I've been completely failed. They didn't give me any good advice. They gave me drugs, but yeah, I couldn't avoid surgery. They took my whole colon out, and that caused other problems as well. So this has become a passion of mine: food, health, just natural healing and prevention rather than cure, because I think there's a big misconception there. I don't think that there is any real cures when you go to your doctor. Certain surgeries can essentially be a cure, but I would argue that that's certainly not actually a cure. And it's like medications that causes inflammation somewhere else. And then your body's having to overwork, and then you get sick somewhere else. And what you're going to do, keep taking more and more medications. So that's the idea about that one. So
absolutely. And when we talked privately, you also mentioned that once you got out of your depression, you actually felt it was your life mission to help other people. So how would you define your life mission as for now?
Honestly, I've always kind of just gone with the flow at school, with work and things like that. I don't think I've ever really done anything meaningful. I've never had any real purpose, waking up in the morning, okay, I've got this and this task to complete, this job to do, but none of it ever really meant anything. And I think the fact that I've suffered so much in the past, even up until like a year ago, now I feel healthy and great, and my mind and my mental cognitive capacity has improved so much. All I want to do is just share this way of life, this way of eating, certain things that I've learned about things that will cause you harm down the line. And so, I speak to a lot of people. As a window cleaner, I have many customers, and a lot of them are, 50, 60, 70, even 80 years old, suffering with all sorts of ailments. And I've learned so much that the medications they tell me that they're on are like surely going to kill them, and I try and go about expressing things in a nice way. I don't want to push anything on someone. But everyone seems to be sick. And so in the beginning, like I was talking to you the other day, I said that I deleted my social media because at the time, nobody was really interested in all of this carnivore diet thing. And they didn't really get it. And I was wasting a lot of time there. And with my mental health improving, I thought, you know what, I think I'm going to just delete all my social media. So instead I set up a YouTube channel, and I found, some decent traction. I've managed to actually help a lot of people, which is great. Actually, selfishly, makes me feel good about me, because that gives me a hell of a lot of meaning and purpose. I wake up in the morning and I have something meaningful to do. And I think when you help people and you're not doing things just for you, like that's the best happiness that there is. When that happiness comes and pays you a visit, it's like, this is really good, and other people are improving their lives. And even just hearing certain people's stories that maybe I haven't directly helped them, just encouraging them to stay on track, or answering some certain questions and things like that. So my mission really is just to be truthful, accurate, and helpful. And that's what I'm about, really.
Amazing. That's really inspiring. Okay, Lee, so now let's delve into your personal story. So you had this particular condition called colitis, but I don't remember the first word.
Ulcerative, yeah. It's basically, so I had ulcerative colitis. That was diagnosed back in 2012. I actually went medication free for the first 2 years. I had really bad advice, actually. Thinking about it now, they told me to increase fiber, one doctor actually encouraged that I drink a beer a night. I mean, that to me, that's insane, but that was some advice I had from a second doctor that I saw. But it wasn't until 2014 that I was then on medication for the first time. And at the time, I was just like everybody else, you know, not everyone, but the majority, where I felt like I'm in good hands. Yep, awesome. You have a drug. I'm gonna get better, basically. And they did make me feel a bit better. They treated the symptoms like all drugs do. They lowered like bowel movements and the frequency of the bowel movements and things like that. So I felt a little bit better. But this medication obviously didn't cure me at all, because all the while I felt a little bit better. This disease had gone from mild proctitis, which is low end and not too severe, to very extreme severe colitis for 100% of my colon. Like every part of my colon was riddled with disease. And so it just goes to show, you know, how you feel when you're on the medication isn't always really what's going on internally. So
Absolutely.
if anyone...
So I'm sorry, Lee, so I would just want to reiterate. So you took the medication and then kind of externally you felt well, but what was happening internally, it was a total disaster.
It's exactly that. Externally, sure. On the outside, my emotions, the way I come across, even my reality of what I was experiencing at the time felt like I was getting better or I was okay. But it was far from the truth. So I just thought I'd mention, actually, if anybody's wondering, colitis, it's an inflammatory bowel disease, which exclusively affects the colon. So you have another inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's, which is very well known. A lot of people are suffering with that. That can affect you anywhere from, you know, gum to bum. It's like anywhere in the digestive tract. So it can be more problematic, harder to diagnose, harder to treat, maybe even more difficult to perform surgeries on if absolutely necessary. So, yeah, I had colitis, so it was restricted to my colon, but obviously I lost that in 2017.
Yeah, Lee, and so how old were you when all this story started? Like when you had your first symptoms?
Okay, so I was 28 when I had it removed. That was 3, 4, 5. So I would have been 23.
So
well,
then,
I would have been 22 when I finally was diagnosed, I think. Sorry.
And could you please, because for many people don't really know what it is and how a person who has it feels. Now, could you describe a regular day of a person who has this kind of condition?
So, sorry, sir, I just lost you there.
I'm asking because many people might not be familiar with this kind of condition. Could you please describe a regular day of a person who has this kind of condition? Like, how do you feel exactly? What do you feel in your body?
Okay. So when you're in remission, and in the beginning, I was mostly in remission because it was so mild. So I just felt like a regular person. And then out of the blue, it would feel, I imagine, what IBS may feel like, and diarrhea, you know, those kinds of symptoms, because then you come out of remission, you flare up, it's like your intestines like, you know, I've had enough. I think it's probably trying to heal. I don't think with an autoimmune, I don't think the body's really attacking itself. I think that there are other threats and culprits there, and the body's doing what it can to help you, but it's kind of like you're getting in the way as well at the same time. So basically, it would just include higher frequency of bowel movements. It would be quite liquidy, but there would always be blood, and even like mucus and stuff like that. So quite nasty symptoms. When I did flare, obviously you feel a little bit disabled. You feel, you know, debilitated somewhat, because you don't have your freedom and your independence like you want. You feel more homebound. You don't want to. You lose your confidence, you know. And so when you're out in the world, it's very difficult to just function in a healthy manner.
Of course, but pretty much every moment you can have a diarrhea, I guess. Like you don't know what's going to happen.
No, exactly, and because it's like mucousy and bloody, it's very difficult. It comes up. It's like you need to go when you need to go. You know what I mean? And again, in the beginning, this wasn't too severe. Like I would actually flare up maybe twice, maybe 3 times a year. But this would only last like 10 days in the very beginning. So for the first year, the second year, whatever it was, I would flare, you know, only a few times a year, and it would be for 10 days, 12 days, maybe. As the years progressed, it started to happen like, you know, 4 times a year for 2 weeks straight. And then the next year, about 5 times that year. And it was like almost 3 weeks straight. And so things got progressively worse. The amount of times I was going to the toilet increased. You know, it started at around about 6 to 7 times a day, which is pretty bad, as it It increased over the years to like 18, 20, 25. And right before my surgery, the very last flare up, I knew that I was in trouble. Like it was so bad, I was actually going to and from the bathroom 30 times a day for 3 days straight.
Wow.
Which, yeah, I remember hearing stories about other people that they would go on the toilet like 22 times, 23 times a day. I was like, wow, you know, I know what it's like to go 7 times. What a poor guy, you know. And he had the surgery and he was cured and all of this kind of thing. And it's crazy that I got so bad that I was going 30 times a day and they had to remove the whole thing. So I didn't see that coming. I think we all think it's not going to happen to us, but that's not the case.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you had this bad flare, and then you went to the doctor, and then like how did they broach you this subject that you need this surgery and to remove your colon?
Okay, so I mean the journey was with the doctor. I mean, I see a few before ending up in hospital. Obviously medication, and I would every now and again have sort of inspection and things like that. But all the while I was eating the wrong diets. They weren't helping me there. And obviously on the last time I flared, it was so bad. I almost felt like just moving the bed into the bathroom. You know, I could have just lived in the bathroom. I was going so many times. I was very dehydrated. At the time I couldn't drive, and so I actually got on the phone to my nan. And she's only around the corner. I just said, you know, I actually don't think I can do another day like this. I don't know whether I have it in me. She was like, right, okay, we'll go tomorrow. And she took me to the hospital. They basically straight away put me on intravenous drip to rehydrate me. They immediately saw like far more inflammation. They basically put a camera up there at the back and examined, and I refused the anesthetic, so I was kind of seeing it all on the screen, and their reaction, it was pretty, yeah, they were like really shocked because they couldn't believe that it would progress so aggressively, so fast. And then they would basically just talk in between them, you know, like, right, steroids and this and that, and then if this doesn't work, you know, an immune suppressant drug, sorry. And that's basically what I went through. So they put me in my own room. I was having a lot of scans and a lot of like tests like every day. It was exhausting. I went on steroids, which did help lower the frequencies, and then they tried to take me off them again, and then it went straight back to like 25 times a day. And then they put me back on steroids, and it went down to like 10 times, and then they took me off, and it went straight back to 20. So I think they were trying to like get me in remission, and then I would be on an extreme medication for life. I don't really know how I feel about that. You know, I don't know how I felt about that at the time, really. I was almost ready just for the surgery. I was almost encouraging it because I just felt like I was poisoned or something. It felt like that, like I wasn't getting better. And so they trialed me on for 4 days before my surgery. They said, right, we've got one more option. This is an immune suppressant drug. It was like a trial drug. And they calculated it. It was about 50-50. I would get in remission, or the other 50%, it would be like, right, you need the surgery. 4 days later, it didn't work. They came in and they said, sorry, we're going to have to admit you in the morning. Sort of took me through things, and it was kind of a little bit of a shock, but at the same time, I saw it coming. It was pretty obvious to me. Then they basically brought round stoma nurses. So for anyone who doesn't know what stoma is, it's basically the part of your intestine that's pulled through your abdominal wall and which you seal a bag over. So the part that you can see, whatever part of your intestine that where they had to cut out, that part of the intestine that's left, that then protrudes through the abdominal wall, that's the stoma. And so they brought round a stoma nurse, and they just talked me through about it, what it is, how it works, what to expect, gave me a little book and things like this. They drew a hole, a circle on my stomach. That's where it's going to be. And then it was like, right, here's your socks, have a shower in the morning, put these on and the gown, come with us, we'll do your surgery. And that was it, really. The next moment I realised I woke up in a lot of pain, and they were like, it's done, it all went well. And the rest is history, really.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. And then, yeah, so you found yourself needing, it's called colostomy bag, right? That's this.
It's a colostomy bag, yeah, or an ostomy bag. I had an ileostomy surgery. They took my entire colon out, but they left the little stub back there. First of all, they said that they don't remove it all in one go, but quite often it's there for an option to reverse. A lot of people, they do get depressed. They're not happy with it. They find it hard to accept. And so they leave that there as an option to reconnect an interior fake bowel, if you like, rather than it being on the outside. But that actually, as it happens, isn't an option for me. I have too small a stub left. It's bleeding. It's still problematic. It's still like affected, you know. And there's just it's not compatible to reattach that. So they've left the stump there, but I have to have that removed. But yeah.
Yeah. So how did you feel psychologically, emotionally, having to use this colostomy bag?
Yeah. So first in the hospital, surprisingly, I didn't really feel too much about it either way. Honestly, I was exhausted. I was tired, and you're just kind of resting, laying, sleeping all you can. And because you're in the hospital, you don't feel like you're in the wrong place. You don't feel like you're unusual. All the nurses that were coming round, they've seen all of this before, and so I felt less strange, if that makes sense. But reality hit me when I came home, you know, because that is reality when you return back to your everyday life.
Yeah. By the way, Ali, how long do you need to stay in the hospital after this kind of surgery?
So the first one, I think it was 10 or 12 days. I can't remember which. It's either 10 or 12 days after the surgery. I was actually in the hospital for nearly 2 weeks leading up to it. So I think I was in surgery for longer than I was in recovering in the hospital. Do you see what I mean? Like leading up to the surgery.
I got it. Yeah.
And then when they were obviously happy that I was independent enough to change, maintain, empty, order back, you know, everything, they were happy for me to go home. And yeah, that's when things definitely changed. All of a sudden you're on your own, because at the time I went back to my mum and dad's house. They would then go to work along with my brother in the day, and then there was just me in the house by myself. And there were no nurses coming around. You know, I all of a sudden felt strange. I didn't feel so good about things anymore. Like I have to try and get back to my normal life, yet there's this obvious thing that's completely changed. I don't know how I feel about it. You know, I didn't like the way it felt. I didn't like the way it looked. I was single at the time. That also played a big part in a way for me, thinking that I may have to come to terms with being single for the rest of my life. Honestly, I don't know. It's just the way I was thinking. But it took me, what was it, about 10 weeks. And then I went back to work, and I went very slow because obviously I'm like walking faster. When you're not confined to your house, you're moving around faster, you're bending down more and stretching and reaching more. And so I took it easy, but I ended up just, you know, getting back to health and pouring myself into work. So at the time I was earning more money then, I think, than I've ever earned, which is strange. I think I was just depressed, getting depressed, you know, and that's how I coped. I was just staying busy at work, because like, what else am I going to do? Go home and feel bad about myself, you know? So I was working probably longer hours and doing more work. But and actually during that time, I met my partner, who I'm engaged to, Lucy. Amazing. So I never saw that. Yeah, I know. I never saw that happening. She was a customer of mine, and we talked every time I went round and cleaned the windows. And yeah, we've just sort of developed a strong relationship. And these things always happen when you're not looking, when you're not expecting it. I didn't, you know, I've heard that cliche over and over, but they genuinely do happen like that. Don't go looking for it. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, wow, it's really heartwarming, you know, really.
Yeah. I really don't want to be single again.
Makes me cry from happiness for you. Really, really. Like, well done, really. Just amazing.
Yeah. And like I said, sorry, I've said this multiple times on my channel, you know, and it sounds harsh to say, but as much as you know, I fell in love with Lucy and we have this wonderful life together, that did not stop my depression coming and going and coming and going. And that's the thing about mental health, is you're never safe from it. If you're that inclined, if you're that way inclined, you know, I've always been really neurotic as a kid. I've always suffered slightly with anxiety, but when things bad happen to me, it's almost like I can't cope. You know what I mean? And so I really plummeted deep. And as we became very comfortable, we got the house, we settled, we just get back to our routine, this started to bother me again more and more. And it's just things like sleep, going to work. It's very unpredictable because you don't know when it's going to work. There's no muscle control. It's like gravity. It works on gravity and just Well, it would even work when you're laying down, but obviously when you're moving around, have a physical job, it works more. And so it was getting to me, you know, I could cope more in the beginning somehow, but even with a better life, which I never thought I would have, this mental health came back, and it was debilitating for me. And I then started to reach out, you know, for help.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Thank you very much for sharing. Okay, guys, so we have been into the interview for about half an hour. If you guys who are present here have any questions regarding this part, because we haven't spoken about the diet yet and about the treatment and stuff like that, but about what Lee has just said, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions. And if not, we'll just continue on. Have any questions, guys? Hey, Revital.
Good evening.
Hi.
I was just wondering, maybe you'll mention it later. What would you do different, you know, now that you know everything? How would you go about it? Like your situation, the diet.
If I was diagnosed like from start kind of thing, if I had this diagnosis of the colitis, or
you had all the knowledge you know now. Of course, you learned everything, but it was too late, right after the operation.
Yeah.
How would you go about it if you knew everything you know now? What would you do different? How would you deal with it?
Yeah, so straight away I would eradicate fiber. I would straight away eradicate fiber. That was my enemy. Fiber is indigestible, doesn't break down. I know a lot of people think it's essential, but it's not a nutrient. It's not essential. There's a lot of theories around the whole microbiome aspect of things, and but that really just pertains to a diverse diet. Therefore, you're going to have diverse microbiome. That has nothing to do with a restricted diet. Sure, your biome is going to be restricted and not so diverse, but that doesn't mean it's not superior. Like, it doesn't mean diversity is what we should aim for. Your biome always adjusts to your diet. So I think for me, obviously, my weakness was in the gut. And they actually encouraged fiber for that. But that's what I think the misinformation is that if you have diverticulitis, even Crohn's, colitis, IBS, fiber is your enemy. You're pretty much allergic to it, because when you consume it, it doesn't break down. You've got this vulnerable spot in your colon, and then you've got this plant matter that hasn't been broken down entirely in your stomach acid, where all animal-based products, meat, fish, dairy, all of this stuff, it just breaks down in the stomach acid entirely. It's completely liberated, it's absorbed in the small intestine. By the time it gets to your colon, very non-inflammatory, not a problem at all. So I think straight away I would take fiber out. And even if I could go back to the point where I came out of surgery, I would do exactly the same thing. Because another depressing aspect about this physically was that when I was eating plants, I could actually feel the fiber trying to kink round into the bag. It was really it was like a constant reminder of my situation, which I didn't need. I would love to just eat and forget about it. And so, yeah, fiber before, as soon as I was diagnosed, eradicate fiber, or even after surgery. That was the main thing. That's the enemy.
All right. And you think you could have prevented it now that you know everything you
know? Yeah. I actually speak to almost daily people that have IBD, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, IBS even, which is obviously not IBD, but and diverticulitis. If they don't eat fiber, they put themselves in remission faster than steroids make them go into remission, and they stay in remission for very, very long periods of time. Yeah, they've done studies comparing steroids, the treatment that they would prescribe to someone when they have a flare-up, or eradicating all carbohydrates or fiber. So you could eat, for example, white rice, sourdough bread, things like that. Very low fiber. Basically, it's not there, and they go in remission like 100% of the time, pretty much. Very, very fast. They stay in remission. Where the steroids, they work. When you're on them, you come off them, they don't work. And all the time you're on steroids, they cause any problems as well. So absolutely, you can avoid, diverticulitis. There's great studies on this too. People that have diverticulitis, they eradicate fiber, it's gone. Constipation's completely resolved when on a zero fiber diet. So.
Wow. So, knowing all that in advance, probably. Yeah, how you could have prevented it. And
I wish that's what the doctor said to me. The very first thing he should have asked me is, what do you eat? What do you drink? Do you drink alcohol? That's another thing. Alcohol's going to damage your gut lining. Seed oils are going to damage your gut lining. things like pecan nuts that obviously they're going to not break down, but they also create permeability in the gut, like seed oils. That's not what you want. If you have a proclivity of weakness in your gut, you want to stay away from anything that's inflammatory. That doesn't break down. Gluten's also a problem. If it's not sorted in the stomach acid, it's not broken and liberated the amino acids from the proteins like it should do. Like gluten, that's why gluten is a problem. We can't break the bonds in the same way, so it inflames the gut. It causes permeability. Seed oils do the same because they go through the gut unchanged. It's exactly the same reason why all of those foods are bad for IBD, diverticulitis, and IBS. So I wish the doctor just said, "What do you eat? What do you drink?" He's like, "Right, stop eating these and drinking these, and try this instead." And I would have probably been fine. I think I probably wouldn't have even needed medication. So
They don't know. They don't know it themselves.
no. If you ask your
They
doctor what
also get
cholesterol
sick.
is, he gets confused. They don't
Well,
even
I
know.
didn't get it. Well, if you ask the doctor what,
Well, like if you get your bloods done and you have high cholesterol, they want to put you on a statin. But if you ask them what cholesterol is, they can't even define it.
yeah,
It's
I
quite,
once
I mean, that's quite embarrassing, right?
doctors are experts on diseases. They're not experts on health.
Disease management, not healthcare.
They have no idea that they're not. They don't know anything about nutrition, and that's the basic.
No.
It's
What
amazing.
they believe they know is what everybody believes they know, and that's based off of corrupt guidelines. Since the 80s, these guidelines have been entirely corrupt. There's no way we should be 60, 70% carbohydrates. They allow for so much sugar. They allow for so much drink. They promote, in fact, seed oils and fibers and plant butters. These are very, very, they're not even food. We've only been eating them for the last 100 years. In the grand scale of 3 million years, like over sort of like human speed, if you believe in that, just say like our species, 300,000 years old, say. We've only just started out 300,000 years consuming vegetable seed oils over like the last 100 years. That's going to be a big deal, That's going to cause a lot of problems.
So you're probably going to talk about the right diet later, right? So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so okay. So thank you very much. So
yeah, no worries. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, guys, any more questions before we continue? Okay, now I'm just curiously, did they mention diet at all? Because you told me that they did tell you, like they did advise you some kind of things such as drinking beer, which doesn't make sense. But did they tell you, for example, about this research that you mentioned about
No.
Fibrous versus fiberless diet? Or
so they only encourage to increase fiber. Another doctor obviously said to drink a beer, and what he said about that was that's going to help you increase your bowel movement a little bit. So I think he was thinking like that I have the opposite problem, like constipation or something, and then all of that wheat and barley and things like that, they might allow some movement and ease and relief somewhat. I'm not really sure, but it's terrible advice. I mean,
yeah,
to recommend daily the consumption of alcohol, it's high in purine content. So purines aren't an issue in food, but if you're gonna drink a lot of alcohol, your liver's damaged, and then you can't metabolize the purines and uric acid properly. So so it's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
you're promoting alcohol with purines. Like red wine's got to be the worst thing. It's both alcohol and high in purines, and so then you're more likely to get gout, for example.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify. So no issue of fiber was mentioned as its harmful effects, but on the other hand, they did encourage you to eat more fiber.
Yeah, the opposite, the contrary.
The opposite of what needs to be done.
I actually think that's often the case. They tell us to lower salt. That's terrible advice.
Yeah, even though you're saying the research had been in existence showing clearly that fiber is not good for people with bowel problems.
Yeah. I mean, there's a study. I don't know if you know Paul Mason on Low Carb Down Under. If anyone's watching, go watch his. I know it's not like the best study in the world, but if you look how they actually carried it out, I can't see a flaw with it. They basically took a bunch of patients that were suffering with constipation. They then put them on a high fiber, medium fiber, low fiber, and a zero fiber diet. The symptoms of constipation, strain, opening bowels, bleeding, all of these kinds of things, gas, and it just went all the way down to absolutely zero on the last. With the zero fiber diet, every patient had complete resolution. I mean,
I watched it. But I actually meant the research about comparing steroids versus fiberless diets. So
oh, see, no. I think that was a more recent study. I can't cite it off the top of my head. Anthony Chaffee was talking about this study actually a while ago. I'll have to find it. I probably should put it in a link or something in some videos sometime.
That's very interesting. Okay, Lee, so you got back home from the hospital and then you found yourself kind of avoiding different mental states, depression with overworking, basically, if I understand it right. But then you mentioned when we talked this a stretch of 6 years before you actually find carnivore diet that actually helped you. Now, Now, could you please describe those 6 years in terms of your mental states, in terms of your physical states? You also mentioned that you tried different kind of diets in between.
So the interesting thing is that I have always been interested in food. I've just naturally gravitated towards it. So previously, before my surgery, I've tried different diets, and the same after. So post-surgery, I was thinking, I should probably eat all these healthy foods. And so I was eating terrible foods, things that would have caused me to lose my colon in the first place. My body must have been thinking, like, what are you doing? Do you want me to lose another body part or something? So I was eating the wrong foods, lots of nuts and seeds. Not good. They don't break down. Nuts and seeds are very hybridized and engineered. They're extra big and sweet. The wild type would quite often kill you. They're very, very toxic. A few almonds make you very, very sick in the wild, yet we can consume them like, 200 or 300 a day. And that's not normal. But I was I was snacking on things like that. I was also eating regular and like little and often. So low volume, high frequency kind of thing. And that's encouraged also, that we should be eating 5 times a day. That is absolutely absurd because it's inflammatory when you eat. I know we have to eat, but it's inflammatory and dangerous to eat food. I know that sounds crazy, but it is. You're asking a lot of your body when you consume a meal. And so you better make sure that there's quality there. That's what I also think, that you should reduce the frequency down to maximum 2 meals a day. That's what I do now, maximum 2. I try and do 1 meal a day as often as possible. And like you said, I often fast for a day here and there, more likely about 2 weeks rather than every week. But I was eating bodybuilder style diet, so chicken, broccoli and rice. I was eating more of a plant-based diet, but with highly processed foods as well. And then I went on sort of lean protein. So a lot of protein, but not enough fat. And I was always having carbs, so basically my body was always fueled with glucose. I was always going up and down with moods because I was going up and down with energy, because when you consume glucose, the body metabolizes it immediately. The reason it does that is because it's toxic. A lot of people don't realize that. When you consume fats as your main source of energy, you put yourself in ketosis. It's very easy and it's very sustainable when you feel like this. And then it might slowly dip, like it slowly dips, and you go, right, I'm hungry. And then you eat, and then it regulates itself. It's very sustainable. It's very easy and non-inflammatory. And so basically I was going up and down with moods, and this would go in and out over the course of years as well. And I can't believe it was 6 years, that I was eating all these foods that caused me to lose my colon. And now they're like going in the bag. And the plants still weren't breaking down. I could feel where food was in the stomach because I would have abdominal contractions because of the nature of my surgery. It just made it very unpleasant. And I was just in my head a lot with it, very neurotic, thinking deeply about everything. And I started to hate life. I started to hate myself. I was hard on myself, berate myself physically and mentally constantly all the time. And then I would, come in from work towards the end and I would freeze. I genuinely froze. I was like paralyzed. No one's in the house, and so I think I didn't have to put on a face or something like that. If anyone was in the house, like Lucy and Sky, the daughter, or if someone, a friend, or I would just come in and pretend like everything's okay. But that's the thing with mental health. It's like you're ashamed of how you feel, but yet you hate yourself and you hold yourself responsible at the same time. I'd come in from work, just completely freeze. I wouldn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I really wanted to do. Some days were really bad and it got so real, scared me, honestly. Welcomed it sometimes, and then other times I'm like, whoa, that's way too real. I don't want to go there. And it got to the point where I got on the phone and I called for help, basically. And we had an extensive 45-minute conversation. 1 second, I'm just going to quickly answer this. Oh, I can't do an interview at the moment. Not like half an hour. Cheers, mate. Sorry, I'm back.
No problem. No problem. Yeah,
I thought it could have been Lucy without a key. So, right.
It's fine.
So yeah, I called these people and we had an extensive conversation, and it was about 45 minutes long, and it actually made me feel a bit better, you know, communicating and expressing myself to a complete stranger somehow. It actually felt quite good. They were basically going to follow me up with a call back from another unit. So they kind of like refine your symptoms and they figure out how they want to treat you. And it was going to be a combination of therapy and potentially a level of medication of some kind. Again, at the time, I wasn't too smart on things like that. I was probably quite happy to welcome it, because for me, I just wanted some kind of relief, you know. And so anyway, these people didn't call back. I was waiting for a few days and I thought, oh, okay, maybe it's going to be a week or so. Week and 2 weeks went by, 3 weeks went by. It was actually 2 months and I hadn't heard anything. I was like, this isn't happening. I'm either going to have to go through the process again or something else is going to have to change, you know. And I was just on the couch watching YouTube. I just stumbled across this anecdote from Mikhaila Peterson, who was talking about, I think it was called Don't Eat This, also on the Low Carb Down Under channel. And she was talking about how she had completely reversed, resolved, cured her autoimmune diseases, her depression, and just all of her ailments had just miraculously gone, disappeared. And she was healed and fixed, and she was now living this full life, and she was glowing with health. I was like, this is incredible. Like, you know, how profound this can't be true, surely, you know. But I expressed that I wanted to give this a go. Like, I have nothing to lose. To Lucy, you know, this is what I'm going to do. This is the plan. So we went to the store and we stocked up on carnivorous foods, basically. So she had resolved all of her problems eating nothing but meat, red meat. I think non-aged beef, and I think she does better on lamb because they don't age it so much.
So before we delve into the diet and how you actually got into that, I have a few questions regarding what you have just said. First of all, during your depression period, how did it affect your relationships?
Oh, it affects everything. I mean, depression is probably, you know, it sounds kind of harsh to say, but it's probably the most selfish state you can be in, because you can only think about yourself. It's very difficult to consider other people when you just feel so in such pain mentally. You can't. It is just paralyzing. You don't feel. It's very difficult to describe. It's like you're trapped, you're confined. You're being like the force of the world is so much, like more than ever, and it's just constant. And sometimes it's hard not to give up, because you almost don't have any fight in you. So it's very difficult, like, to do things that you need to do, like certainly things that you don't want to do that need doing anyway. It's very difficult to do the most basic tasks. It's a very selfish state. And so it did affect things, you know, like my partner would have noticed. Of course she would notice, you know. Slowly over time it's getting worse. My mum would notice, of course, you know, like, these people know me. And it does affect things, you know. It's like, I think I probably came across like I had bipolar, because I would have to really I felt like I owed it. Do you know what I mean? You have to force things. Like, I can't not smile like for the whole day.
Yeah.
So I'll just smile and I'll be nice, and it's very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the second question, for the people who don't know, could you tell, like, who's this woman, Mikhaila Peterson?
Yeah, Mikhaila Peterson. So I was familiar with Jordan Peterson first. And he's a psychiatrist, like mainstream. He's become more mainstream, somewhat controversial, which I cannot understand, because I think he speaks nothing but sense and truth. I think if you listen to what he says, he does wonderful work, and he's an extremely helpful person to everybody. So that Mikhaila Peterson's his daughter, and she, from a very young age, had suffered with so many ailments, many autoimmune diseases, but very severely for such a young girl. I think she had like hip and knee replacements or ankle replacements, when she was like 15, something like that. So yeah, she's very unfortunate. She's an extremely sensitive person to food. You know, not everybody has to be as compulsive about being that strict, you know, as Michaela Peterson does. But I'm not far off. I've learned that I'm not far off. Yeah.
Okay. So then you listened to her podcast or video, and then you decided to give it a try, basically.
Yes. Yeah. This was like it was like a TED talk, but you know, but not. It was on another channel. But yeah, it blew me away. I saw all of the results and this kind of thing, and decided to. So yeah, it was red meat. I didn't really realize that there was this carnivore diet thing. Really, I'm sure obviously that people eat a multitude of different foods and diets, but I never knew that there was this thing at the moment that's sort of growing and growing called the carnivore diet, and it was dubbed that name by Shawn Baker, who actually defines it as very, very, very low carb at least, but you know, find your threshold if you like. Some people have more tolerance to it. So really, the carnivore diet is anything, you know, 70% meat plus. Really, is a carnivore diet. Or just mostly meat is still a carnivorous diet. If you think about what defines a carnivore, any organism that eats mostly meat. But the carnivore diet has become this thing where it's like, you know, all meat or nearly all meat. But you've obviously got ketogenic diets and ketovore, which is in between. So what happened actually is after what I'd seen of Michaela Peterson, I then looked into it more, and other YouTube videos were coming up. So I was seeing multiple anecdotes from different places, you know, and then this whole BBBE challenge popped up, which is a beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. That's what you eat. It's a 30-day challenge, and basically people are encouraging people to just adopt this challenge for 30 days, see how you feel, and then maybe you want to continue. So this is what I did. This is what we got when we went to the store. We just bought minced beef, a couple of steaks, loads of eggs, some bacon, butter to cook in, salt, water. That's it. And we've just basically jumped in the next day, which I wouldn't recommend to do overnight. But it worked pretty well for me, really. I wonder if that has to do with me not having a gut. Not sure. But we both delved in. She was just being supportive. She had no real need to do it as such. Though she did lose 4.5 stone. So that's like there's 14 pounds in a stone. Oh no, sorry, what is it? What did she lose? 45 pounds in 4.5 months. I'm trying to remember how I remembered it.
So it's yeah. I think that would be around 20 kilograms, something like that.
Yeah. I think that is about right. Yeah, it was 45 pounds in 4.5 months, doing no exercise and eating even more than she'd ever eaten. So it shows you that it's not calories in, calories out. There are far more things going on there, hormonal functioning and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your experience after starting this carnivorous diet. So in your case, correct me if I'm wrong, it was 100% animal products right from the beginning.
Yeah, 100% all the time. Yeah. So the first 30 days, like I said, was those foods, and the first couple of days, the first 3 or 4 days, I was craving everything. You know, it's to do it overnight. That's why I wouldn't recommend it. But also, I didn't realize I was a sugar addict at the time. I didn't realize that was a thing, you know. But yeah, I found that out pretty quick. After 3 or 4 days, you're like, wow, I'm actually an addict. I'm like withdrawing from porridge oats and orange juice and chocolate and dessert. Even just the pasta that I would have with my mince when I did eat my mince before. I would have, you know, spaghetti bolognese, lasagna and things like that. Well, they're lean meats. There's no fat, but there's lots of grains. You've got pasta, you've got rice, for example, chili con carne and stuff like that. So I was withdrawing from all of this glucose. And so it was quite hard. The way I went about it, it was quite difficult. And I would say for the first 2 weeks, I was very tired. I felt more lethargic, if I'm honest, for the first 2 weeks. But at the end of the day, I was ready to go to bed an hour earlier than I usually would. I would struggle up the stairs with no energy. And I was like, this diet, I don't think it's going to happen for me. You know, it just feels too extreme. But that phased out. And honestly, within the next week, so going from 2 weeks where I was like, oh, this is really hard, it increasingly got better. And honestly, spot on 3 weeks later, so 21 days in, I had all this energy. It was unbelievable. I was at work. It was a blue sky day, sun out, just felt in a better mood. And I had so much energy. And I worked through the morning. And I was like, wait a minute, I feel really good. you know, I'm smiling. I pulled over actually in my van, and I just ended up pulling out my phone and recording my testimony. I was just like, you know, and I don't usually do that kind of thing. But yeah, I was just in a really good mood. I was smiling, and I'd also learned quite a bit up to that point as well, delving into things and trying to, you know, understand why this would work. And yeah, recorded my testimony, put it on my social media. A lot of people were really, really happy for me. But that's actually the first video I posted on my YouTube channel, and you know, a much better response on there, and people that actually are inspired somewhat, or they ask questions. So I don't know, it has more impact there. But yeah, honestly, 3 weeks from doing this diet, my depression had lifted. I was suffering with acid reflux every single day. The very next day that went. So even though I was struggling for the first 2 weeks, my acid reflux was gone. And I used to take like Gaviscon and Renes and things like that to mitigate some of the acid, you know, and the heartburn. Some people call it heartburn. That went in on the second day, and my acne started to clear up really fast. That was gone in like a week. I stopped sweating, and so it's very strange that I was out working and I would realize I was just cool, like dry. It was very strange, and usually I would sweat more. I would burn in the sun, but now I don't burn in the sun anymore. And so I was looking into all this stuff, and well, plants increase photosensitivity. So when you eat a lot of plants and you go out, yeah, you probably want to put some sun cream on, which makes no sense because now you're not going to get vitamin D, right? Everyone's deficient in vitamin D3. And we need cholesterol to synthesize vitamin D. Where's cholesterol? In red meat and eggs, saturated fats. So it's just an amazing thing, you know. I felt great in 3 weeks, and then I was learning so much, and I was trying to figure out why all this stuff was happening. But I guess it's just like super lucky for me to also have a similar anecdote, you know, that the thing that inspired me, it's like it came to fruition for me too in just 3 weeks.
Amazing. So have you had any waves of depression since then?
No actual depression. I mean, we have our ups and downs, but I'm able to cope better with things. My outlook's far better. I think it's also helpful that I have, like I say, like more meaning and purpose in my life. So if I'm having a little moment, it's like, well, get over yourself. This isn't important.
Absolutely.
I think somehow, and like I was talking to you the other day, I think that the fact that when you get into ketosis, you're fueling your brain with ketones. It's a very cleaner burn. It's very clean burning.
Right.
You're not going up and down. I think that your brain is nourished. I think that meat is very therapeutic and healing. If you think about the brain, it's made of saturated fats and cholesterol, and now I'm eating an abundance of it. And so,
Yeah.
and I'm not fueled on glucose. And so rather than going up and down, crashing, and then thinking about food all the time, that's restricting. That's what's restricting to me now. I could never go back to that. I don't want to be crippled and, you know, debilitated with this depression. I don't want to have acid reflux and rely on medications and paracetamol when I get headache. I haven't had a migraine. I was also saying that to you. I used to get symptoms of migraines and ocular migraines where I'd have like fuzzy blurs in my eyes, and then it would be to the point where I can't see much at all. And then that would pass after like 4 hours, where I used to, as a child, get full-blown migraines. Well, I haven't had a migraine or even a symptom. Haven't had a headache. I haven't taken a paracetamol for a whole year. And it's been a whole year since I've been on this diet. I've mixed things up a little bit with how I eat my food, and but what I'm eating is strictly carnivorous, no plants in the diet whatsoever. And things just get better and better. I don't sweat, I don't burn, no wax in the ears, no plaque on my teeth. I sleep better, I have more energy, no lethargy. Sure, I have bad days, you know, like I said, but those bad days
like everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, life isn't about happiness. Life is not, this is what I got wrong, is life is not about happiness. Don't go looking for happiness. Concentrate on things that are meaningful. Give yourself a purpose. Happiness pays you a visit all the time. It's great.
Exactly. Wow. That is so touching. So much wisdom in those words. I completely agree. Okay, guys, do you have any more questions in relation to what has just been said? You are welcome to unmute yourself and ask your questions. Don't be shy. Okay. Yeah, actually, I just like, you told me about your depression lifting and stuff like that. I just remember that we had Emily Penton here a few months ago, and then 2 months ago, and she has an amazing story of curing her, getting out of her bipolar disorder and multiple sclerosis, using carnivore diet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and she had tons of medications prior to that. Just so inspiring story. Now tell me, Elise. So according to, because you're probably like me, you like to research things, you like to understand things deeply.
Yes,
so from what you have understood from your research, why like ketogenic approach, carnivore approach, why do they affect our mental state so well? Because I know people get rid of their depressions, their bipolars, there are many other disorders. Yeah. So why, like, what's the underlying mechanism for that?
Like I said, I put it down to ketosis over glucose. That is the thing. Like Dr. Palmer, who was treating an obese patient. He said, let's go on a ketogenic diet. We'll try and get you down to a healthy weight. And in the process, while he was medicating this patient for bipolar, it wasn't doing much. He put him on a ketogenic diet, and by chance, he realized that, wait a minute, I've just cured my patient's bipolar, because he came back and said, my bipolar's gone. And so all he did was put him in ketosis. It doesn't have to be so strict, like 100% carnivore, but I think you get yourself into an optimal range of ketosis. So let's just say consume no more than 50 grams of carbohydrates every day, no more than that. Choose your carbohydrates wisely, and also I would recommend local and ripe, whatever it is that you're having. Don't have an avocado if avocados don't grow in your country. If you are in England, where I am, in the UK, I see all of my customers, they all, almost without exception, they have apples, lemons, and bananas in their pantry. Where are the apples, lemons, and bananas in this country? And what year is it? What season is it? It's like it's winter, yet there's an apple, a banana, and a lemon that you're going to have. You're going to juice your lemon. You're going to eat a banana with your grains. So to me, there's multiple things going on. There's the ketosis. There's also the fact that if you're not in ketosis, you're having glucose. Therefore, you go up and down, and that does not help your mood. Does not help your mental capacity. The brain fog's there, because it's almost like getting in the way of the real fuel, because your body's having to burn this glucose first because it's toxic. So I think it's that's why we rapidly use glucose. That's why people believe it's the optimal energy fuel for the body. But we make all the glucose we need via a process called gluconeogenesis, and so we make glucose out of certain amino acids and glycerol from fats. So there is no need to consume glucose. And even when you fast for a week, your blood glucose drops, but it stays right in the healthy threshold. So if you're craving carbohydrates, you're just a sugar addict. Your body does not need or require those to move forward, not to do a sprint, not to, go and hunt and gather, whatever it might be, go to work, go to the gym. You don't need that glucose, because your glucose will always stay the same in the blood. It has to take it out of the blood. So it wants it to stay the same. So all that excess is toxic. That's why you have to use it up. And that's why I think that I don't sweat, because all plants contain all of the toxins in the world. Plants, if you think about all drugs, they're all derivatives from plants, like heroin, cocaine, toxin, cannabis, all of these things, all the carcinogens, all these cyanides and leptins and oxalates, alcohol. If you think about someone who drinks alcohol, the next day they're sweating profusely. It's toxic. Our skin is the largest organ in the body, and it's a great way to rid the body of toxins. When you don't consume plants, it's like you don't sweat. And if I'm in the desert, yeah, of course I'm going to sweat, when you overheat. But here in the UK, there's no reason why I should be sweating all the time. And so because I don't drink alcohol, I don't intake any plant material, I'm running on ketones, and I'm eating foods that aren't toxic. I only source like pasture-raised produce. If I do have dairy, it's all grass-fed and it's all raw. It's not pasteurized. Pasture-raised eggs. These things contain everything. They're very nutrient-dense, and they're extremely non-inflammatory. So they're just very easy on your gut. Good for your teeth. If it's good for your teeth and it doesn't damage your teeth, it's not going to damage any other part of your body, including your organs and things like that. So
right. Okay. Thank you so much. We have a question from Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Eric. Hi, hello. How are you doing?
How you doing? Yeah.
Thank you so much. So interesting. Amazing. It's admirable what you have done, and take the courage to share this in a moment in which the whole world is going the other way.
Yeah. Oh
The whole
man,
world
it's
is
so hard.
going
Yeah.
into the vegan, vegetarian, and even the panic stuff.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
this. This is kind of new, but it's all at the same
Exactly.
time.
Yeah. You are right.
Be,
Yeah.
be, because I am from Colombia. I live here in Colombia, and I've been in contact with shamans here in Colombia. The shamans in Colombia are called the Taitas in the South Amazon, Colombian Amazon, and Mamos in the Sierra, in the northeast of the country, and they have a very carnivore diet,
Right.
very
Right.
carnivore diet, and they do that on purpose
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
search of health. Of health, the mammals is interesting. I have a question. Let me just context about this. The mammals in the Sierra Nevada of Santa Marta, they take the little kids when they are born after 6 months old, and they took them to a cave for 9 years. And in that cave, they are nurtured not only intellectually and words and love, but also with meat all the
Right.
time. Meat, special kinds of meat for 9 years until they can go out to the
Right.
world. It's amazing. So thank you so much for sharing this. I'm going to explore more on this definitively, and
Cool.
it's a different approach. I I I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Lee. And I
Awesome.
have a kind of question.
Mhm.
Is that is there a, a preventive approach? I mean, if we don't have any condition or nothing like that, but could we change into that kind of diet just to the prevention side, to look for preventing things?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is one part of the question. The second one is advisable not to mix different kinds of meat while eating? I mean,
Right.
pork and beef,
Yeah.
or what I mean.
Sure.
Those are
I
my
got
two
you.
questions. Thank you again.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely, it's a great prevention. I do personally believe it's a species-specific diet. So I know that some people and all of our ancestors, they did eat some plants, but these plants were scarce. Most plants are very, very poisonous and toxic. You would have to be very selective about what you consume because so many plants are going to kill you, make you sick. If there are certain vegetables around them, tubers, potatoes, starchy things like that, we boiled them. We boiled them to a high level, to a pulp. You know what I mean? We didn't eat them raw. Now, in the summer, we may have gravitated towards fruits for like 3 weeks of the year, some berries, but these were only available for 3 weeks of the year. And so, and also when they're ripe, the defense chemicals in plants, they're lowered. And so they're not as inflammatory. And we use these to put on weight for the winter. So I do believe, though we did eat plants, we ate at least 70% fatty ruminant. And that's why ruminant is so important. So you wouldn't be able to have the same results or present preventative results on just chicken or just rabbits, right? Because there's not enough fat. So that's basically what rabbit starvation is. If you only consume rabbits, it's too lean, just protein and not enough fat. And so basically you need the fat or the glucose. Otherwise, you're just going to starve because you have no energy source. But if you have the option, absolutely fat is superior. Fat is the way to go. And rather than lean, you want to go for fatty cuts. And that's what I think that in the wild, yes, we would have eaten the liver because it's very nutrient dense, but there's also only so much liver to a whole animal where there's a lot of fat and protein. And so some people overdo organs because they're eating organs at a higher ratio to the way it would exist within an animal. Another thing is that, yeah, fat's obviously important. So ruminant fatty meat. And also because they're ruminant, the food is very pure. It's gone through multiple stomachs. By the time it's like turned into meat, it's very pure and non-inflammatory. Pork, for example, pigs and their fat are higher in polyunsaturated fats rather than saturated. And that makes a big difference. So you wouldn't want to base your diet on pork and chicken because chicken's too lean and the pork is too high in polyunsaturated fats, which is like plants. They offer higher ratios of omega-6 to omega-3, where we want to switch that round. We want omega-3 to be the prominent omega-3 fatty acid rather than omega-6, sorry, 3 to 6. And so I think, yeah, in nature, we would have gravitate towards ruminant animals, red meat, because red meat is so nutrient dense, even compared to things like chicken and pork. It has everything. It's like a balance. If you eat a whole cow, that's the balanced diet. You're getting all your essential fatty acids, essential proteins, and all of the micronutrients in the right forms, unlike plants, once again. So, for example, in red meat, you've got heme iron. In plants, you've got non-heme iron, and the conversion is bad. The absorption rate is bad. The same as retinol, which is vitamin A found in meat and eggs. But beta carotene is the vitamin A version in plants, and it's not the same. You will not absorb as much. So it's very confusing for the body, and therefore it's inflammatory. And then you're starving a little bit because you're not nutrified enough. So I believe it's a great way to prevent disease because it's non-inflammatory and it's nutrient dense. All chronic disease, in my opinion, comes from systemic inflammation, which derives from indeficiencies or toxins. Well, there are no indeficiencies, like a deficiency of nutrients in red meat, and there are no toxins in the wild. And so, yeah, great prevention, a great cure, and that's why ruminant red fatty meat is important and not just chicken. You can have chicken, but have chicken when you eat eggs. Have some fatty red meat, and if it's lean, add some butter, add some egg yolks to bring the fat up, because fat's important if you're not eating carbohydrates. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Luis.
No worries.
Okay,
cheers,
guys.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I'm really enjoying it, by the way, Lee. Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's different from anything I've ever done as well. I've never had an interaction like this before.
Amazing. Actually, to tell you the truth, that's my intention. Every time I invite a person here for those webinars to really create an experience that is a little bit different from everything they've ever done.
It's nice work. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, guys, do you have any more questions?
Yes, I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, Revital.
So what about fruit? Aren't fruit easy to digest and meat difficult to digest, like for the digestive system?
Okay, so I mean, I can start by saying from my own experience, so because without getting too graphic, I don't want to offend anyone, but because I wear an ostomy bag, that's basically where my colon would be. So as food enters my bag, that's where it would enter people's colon. So when I eat meat, and I've even eaten raw chunks, big chunks, swallowed chunks of meat, I've never had an obstruction. I've never had any issues and, inflammation, and it's digested entirely, like down to fluid almost. Where if I eat fruit, if I cut a kiwi into quarters and just swallow that quarter, I'm not going to be able to process that. I'm going to have to go to the hospital because that would not have broken down. It's going to try and kink through. That's why, again, like you won't find meat in your poop, but you find plants in your poop. The meat is the poop. Everything else that breaks down is what actual stool is. That's a healthy stool. Like you shouldn't find the pits and seeds and skins and like florets of, you know what I mean? Like all this plant material. It's the cellulose is basically what it is. Only ruminant animals, funnily enough, can digest cellulose, and they're nourished by it through saturated fats. They make a conversion. They're magical animals. They have like 4 stomachs, this 4-chamber stomach and the rumen, and they churn it up. They rechew the cud and it goes back down, and they end up converting this fiber into saturated fat. But we can't do that. And so a lot of people compare our gut volumes and relative volumes and things like that with other primates, but we're not the same. They spend like 80% of their day just chewing. If you look at them, they're just always chewing. Then it goes down into their stomach acid, which is different to ours. And then it goes in through their small intestine. When it gets to their colon, they've got cecums and all sorts. But it goes into their large intestine, their colon is huge compared to ours. If you look up the relative gut volumes of like primates and ruminants and then compare it to us, we've got these tiny little colons. And so we partially ferment it. And that's what causes all of the gas, the wind, all of these digestive problems as well. But it doesn't really ferment it entirely, because it doesn't have the chance. And then we have to get rid of it. And that's why people think they have, regular bowel movements. It's like, of course, you have to get rid of that stuff. It didn't break down. And you didn't get nutrified by it. It wasn't a benefit to you. So sorry, to get back to fruits, I do believe that some people do very well on fruit, but if it's not in your country and it's not right, I don't think you should be eating it. You shouldn't be eating a fruit when it's wintertime. Like, what fruits grow in wintertime? Maybe an apple. So only eat apples if you're going to eat fruit. Take the skin off, discard the seeds, they're full of cyanide. Cook them maybe. But then it's like, why am I eating the fruit as well? Why am I eating the fruit? If it's only available for 3 weeks of the entire year, why is that essential that I eat that fruit for 3 weeks? Because for the 11 months and 1 week, that hasn't been in my diet. It's not essential. I got everything I needed from red meat, including vitamin C, and a lot of people don't realize that. You won't find that in a lot of the literature. They put zero vitamin C in meat, but there isn't. That's just an assumed thing. It's like, we've known this for a long time. So during the Napoleonic Wars, they used to feed the soldiers raw horse meat to cure their scurvy. It's an anti-scorbutic agent, meat. And as long as your eggs are pasture raised, they're out in the sun, they're healthy, eating their natural diet, they'll have traces of vitamin C. And because you don't consume glucose competes with vitamin C. That's not there. You're going to absorb all of the vitamin C that's in meat, eggs, milk. Also contains vitamin C if it's not pasteurized, because it's not destroyed. It's a water-soluble vitamin, so it's destroyed along with all the B vitamins and the lactase to break down lactose, which is why everybody's lactose intolerant. It's like, everything that they're teaching is wrong. If you're going to eat cheese, eat it with your meal as a condiment, as well as milk. Don't have it pasteurized. Then it's a complete product. If you're going to eat fruit, eat it when they're available, local, and actually completely ripe. But at your own risk. I mean, some people do very well. Some people don't have any adverse effects. But if you have a problem in your gut, if you have issues with digestion, then I would recommend not consuming fruits or chewing them a lot. Yeah, it's difficult. It is difficult, but and some people, obviously, in certain parts of the equator, they have more fruits available for longer periods of the year, and so they're used to it through generations and generations. They've made subtle adaptations, and so they do better on fruit, especially if you're more active as well. But if you live a sedentary lifestyle and you're over in the UK and you're eating melons and pineapples and all these wonderful fruits that we enjoy to eat, it's like, but you know, why are you eating that? You almost have no business eating that, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Europe is cold and Russia.
Yeah.
But the Middle East or Africa, it's different. So
I think exactly. I mean, it does depend on you as an individual, your ancestry and your genes, and somewhat. They don't play as big a part as people think, I don't think, because we are humans. Our anatomy is pretty much the same. And if you're a human, I do believe you should be eating a proper human diet. And I believe that is 70% ruminant fatty meat, including other products, eggs, cooking animal fats. Don't touch seed oils, get rid of those. Then that other 30%, sure, you could have some potatoes, you could have some sourdough bread, you could have some berries. But if they're not available, you almost need to increase that meat and eggs to 80, 90%. And for me, or sensitive people, we do better on 100%. You know, like I've seen a lot of people that trial carnivore. Some of them feel incredible, and then they introduce something back in, and it cripples them. They're like, "Oh my goodness, I went out to eat at a restaurant, and I felt terrible for 3 days." And then that was like an experiment, and they're like, "Wow, it's not worth it." Other people, they introduce stuff back in, and it's not too bad. But I remember eating a steak at a restaurant. I went away for a week. I managed to do great all the way through, but I had this steak cooked in seed oils. It was clearly cooked in seed. I could always taste it. You know, when you only eat the stuff for so long, you become really sensitive. And the next day, it was like, oh wow, this doesn't feel right. I almost felt like I could have got an acid reflux again. This kind of repeat here. I can feel it here. That omega-6 fats from the vegetable seed oils. So very strange, but yeah.
Right, thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, guys. Any more questions? Okay, now we've got a few questions prior to this interview, so I sent you some of them. Now someone is asking if you ever considered, because fiber was an issue, if you ever considered kind of high juice diet, because juice doesn't have fiber as well.
So yeah, so basically when you take the juice out of a fruit, it's like one of the worst things you can do. So you basically just created alcohol without the acetaldehyde element. So when you take juice out of a fruit, you're left with fructose. When you consume fructose, it's not like glucose. It might not even spike your blood glucose, right? Because it's fructose. So it's very sneaky. It has this kind of just sneaky effect. I can't think of a better word really. Where it's going straight to your liver, basically. Your liver has to metabolize that. So I know, and I've been guilty of this. I went on a juice fast for like 7 days. You know, we were just doing nothing but juicing the fruits and vegetables and stuff like this. And it was tasty. I quite enjoyed that sugary taste at the time. But really, all I ate was fructose. Sure, I did get some magnesium. Sure, I did get some vitamin C and things like that. Sure. What people call antioxidants. I don't believe they're antioxidants. I think they're more like oxidants in plants. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it because, do you know, it's funny thing is when just before my surgery, when I was bad, it wasn't the last few days when I was to and from 30 times a day. It was sort of like 20 times a day. I was online and this guy said juice cabbages because it's full of glutamine and glutamine helps heal the gut. And so I was like, right. So we went to the store, we bought some cabbages, and I just started juicing this cabbage. It didn't do anything for me whatsoever. And I wouldn't recommend anybody juices anything because, sure, fiber is an issue, but funnily enough, if you're going to eat sugar, you should be eating fiber. Why? Because the fructose attaches itself to the fiber, and the fiber takes it away from the liver, and you will then not digest the fiber, but you're gonna take the fructose away from the liver. You should always protect your liver. The liver's the most underrated organ in the whole body. It's like a wonderful organ. It's got superpowers, you know, it does so much. We ask so much of it, and yet you can re-heal and build new cells and tissues. It's an incredible organ. So you want to really, by the definition of health and food, you want to protect the liver every time. Everything you consume, is this protective of my liver? Because yeah, it's so important. So if you juice a fruit, that's even worse than eating a fruit.
Okay. Thank you very much for
that answer. Stop feeding your kids alcohol, basically. So many kids are drinking just juice. They give their kids orange juice, pineapple juice, and it's like you just gave your kid alcohol because the body doesn't know the difference between a fructose molecule coming from orange juice or any juice or wine. You know, and actually they'd stop at 2 glasses of wine, yet they can drink orange juice all day long.
Wow. Okay. And then the same person is asking, what's your relationship with fasting? Like, are you fasting nowadays? Have you tried fasting as a remedy for your conditions and stuff like that?
Yeah. So basically, I've never fasted before the surgery, but I did play around with fasting on the carnivore diet. So initially, because I was probably adapted, but not all the way. So when I played around with the fasting, it actually was quite hard work for me because I don't have a colon. If I fast, I run very, very low on nutrients, especially electrolytes, because basically other people, they don't realize this, but they're by having a colon, they hold water, they hold salt, they hold magnesium, calcium, potassium, these things. But because I don't have a colon, if I fasted and I went about it the wrong way, I would feel like severely like unhealthy at the time through doing this fast. And the whole reason for a fast is that you're going to benefit from it, you know. And there is definitely benefits from fasting. So I did play around in the beginning and I was like, you know, I don't think I'm going to do this again. I also tried to reduce the frequency of meals from 3 to 2 and 1 and things like that. And now I've managed to do no more than 2 meals, no snacking. That's very important. Do not snack. And then now on more of a 1 meal a day type of routine. Or at least I do that 2-3 times a week at least. But now because I've taken my frequencies down to 1 meal a day, I don't know how that's affected this, but I can fast for 24 hours, no problem whatsoever now. So I have played around and I'm kind of working on it still. I would like to find where the ceiling is for me, because I think without a colon you are somewhat of an exception in terms of how you benefit from fasting. I would love to be able to get into autophagy, you know, like every month maybe get into autophagy, but I'm not sure that's very easy for me. I think that my best chance is to perhaps stretch the fast to maybe 36 hours and right before eating, exercise I think that's my best way of getting into autophagy, and then have food ready and break my fast with fat. You don't want to break your fast with a high glycemic carbohydrate, for example, because it just defeats the whole object of why you fast. So when you break your fast, have some butter, have some egg yolks is a great way, because egg yolks are fatty, nutrient dense. They have everything, every nutrient to nurture a chick into good health. And so for me, that's my strategy anyway.
Yeah. Could you expand on that, by the way? Why it's not good for people who are not on a carnivorous diet to break their fast with high carbs, such as fruit or any other high carb food? Like, what's your opinion about that?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I suppose if you're on a plant-based diet, a lot of the foods you're going to have are going to spike your blood glucose. So I would say for people that are on plant-based diets, your best bet is to eat something like an avocado or olives. Though they're high in omega-6 to omega-3, the wrong way around, in my opinion, it's still high in fat. And so you're not going to go, whoa, like you fasted and it's like, it's gone like this. And then it's like, wow, I'm ready to eat. And then because you decreased sensitivity, and now you've kind of increased it somewhat, and I don't think that that's indicated as a healthy strategy. So that's the reason why, it's all about blood glucose and insulin sensitivity. That is the whole reason. And then obviously when you fast for long enough, you get into autophagy, you have, we could call it like a cleanup crew come along, and they eat away at the dead cells and damaged tissues first, which is why it's so great for healing, because you can recoup such a way, you start to take away the rotten materials first, right? And maintain your health. It doesn't want to just take things out of your bone marrow and vital nutrients that it's stored, because we store nutrients all the time based on what we eat. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you so much. Another person is asking if you had a friendly conversation with a vegan person, like ethical vegan, who would question the ethical, the moral aspect of a carnivore diet, because it includes killing of animals, in a friendly way. How would you defend your point of view regarding that?
It's very difficult, because I have had conversations with customers that I didn't realize were vegan. So they're sick, they tell me what they're taking and what the problem is, and then I kind of start to go about informing them somewhat. You're not in a patronizing way, not in a forceful way, but I talk about food, and then they'll smirk and they sort of say like, oh, I'm on a vegan diet, and I actually feel guilty, because I don't want to offend people. I don't want to just upset people. But it's very difficult. The way I would honestly go about it, I don't know whether this would sound very nice to them either. And this is like, to me, it's just natural. But if you think about the animal kingdom, it's really quite brutal. It's not, life is hard, life is harsh, life is cold, life doesn't wait for you to have your retirement party. Life doesn't wait for you to feel good and achieve your goals. Life is hard and it's brutal. And if you've ever watched any Discovery channels and these wildlife channels, I mean, everything is murdering everything, and they do it in such a diabolical way that I would argue that, and for me, I obviously source from regenerative farming and butchers that are sourcing from those farms. So these cows and even the chickens, the pigs, they're all out in the sun, on pasture, eating their natural, healthy diets. They're healthy, happy. If anything, you've got to think of it like this. Those animals are protected from predation from other animals, right? The livestock, they're out having a happy time on the grass, and they don't have to worry about being predated on. And so the fact that we have this livestock in that manner, it's almost like the opposite of animal cruelty. We've taken them out of this situation where they're constantly, threat. Their lives are at threat. And so they have a long, healthy life, eating their natural food, natural diet. That's what any animal, and they reproduce, this is what any animal wishes for their lives in nature. And then right towards the very end, we take them, right? Unfortunately, we all have to go through somewhat of this process, but they take them aside and they give them a quick shock. And then it's it, that's done. Now, and I think it's important to realize that we're not doing this for the fun of it. We're doing this for a very important reason, and that is human health. If you looked at a cat, for example, and they predated upon an antelope, and what would you like? if you care about animals, like what one do you care about? Just the one that's not eating other animals, or do you not like the ones that eat? Do you know? And would you want that lion, for example, to eat vegetables and get sick when their species-specific diet is to eat meat? We are the same. Like, I know that some people say, oh, we're not carnivores. We are carnivores because any organism that consumes mostly meat, and throughout history, around the world, we have consumed mostly meat. Every cave painting, all the isotope testings indicate this. If you run isotope testings on people in their skeletal structures from hundreds of thousands of years ago, it shows you quite clearly we had 70% like fatty animal products in the diet. Now, we run isotope testings today on people, and it shows all this plant material in the diet. Well, we're not healthy. You know, we're all sick. And if you look at the indigenous tribes, they eat red meat, they drink milk and all this stuff. Their jaws are beautiful and developed, and all their teeth that fit in their mouth perfectly. Over here in the West, we all need braces. That's malnutrition. Your jaw did not develop correctly. Why? Because you starved yourself somewhat of vital nutrients that are found in the things they tell us not to eat: eggs, things with cholesterol and saturated fats, salt. We used to drink the blood, and vegetarians, vegans hate to hear that. But tribes in the world still to this day drink the blood. Why? It's high in salt and electrolytes. Yet we're supposed to avoid salt. This is why we should liberally salt our foods. Have your eggs, have your meat, and salt it with Himalayan, Celtic, Redmond sea salt, high quality salt, because we need to re-nutrify, re-mineralize these foods that are depleted. Apart from that, the soil, if you're going to eat plants, the soils are depleted. So you should still salt your food. But if I'm going to have a conversation with someone, it's very difficult. I think that they would tap out. I'm trying to have an amicable conversation. I'm trying to find some level of peace. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to offend you. But what do you care about more, the animals or your children? Because your children need meat. Like DHA, dihexanoic acid, it's like this very important fatty acid that's crucial for development in children. That's why they put it in all of these formulas. You know, it's breast milk, it's all of these things. But if you're on a vegan diet, you don't get that. And so if you wean your child off of milk, or they've never had milk, if you look at that formula, it has DHA, and that's for a reason. Now imagine you wean off the milk, and from that point onwards, they're still developing. All they've done is weaned off milk. They're, you know, entering toddler stage and going to school, and it's crucial that their brains and their mouths and their jaws, everything in their body develops correctly. If you deprive them of saturated fats, cholesterol, B12, B6, creatine, carnosine, CoQ10, heme iron, retinol, the list goes on. Taurine, which is found in blood, by the way. It's found in the fluids of animals. It's like if you deprive your child of that, your child's going to need braces, your child's going to need glasses, your child's going to find themselves sick and on medication. Why? Because you deprive them of nutrients. And now it's systemic inflammation in the body because your body's overworking to try and force things into cells. Like, that's what high blood pressure is, you know? It's like the body's forcing water into the cell, but it's not healthy. But if it doesn't, you'll die. So it's very difficult, you know? It's very difficult. I've had conversations online, and what I find is that I try and have conversations, but they're very and again, I don't want to offend anyone, but I find a lot of vegans that I talk to that I don't know, they attack me, but I don't ever attack vegans. I actually believe that they've just been misled. I believe that there's this fallacy based on the cholesterol hypothesis, which is wrong. And if you go, okay, well, cholesterol's bad, and then you're happy to buy into the propaganda, and then you've also got this, you know, preying on people's emotions with animal cruelty, and they definitely make that look worse, I'm afraid. That's also a bit of propaganda going on there. It's not as bad as how they make it look. And those people that make those videos, they're in agriculture. They want you to eat plants. They're sugar companies and pharmaceuticals. They want to sell you drugs. They want to make you sick. They want you addicted to their colorful, contraindicated cereals and carbohydrates and highly processed foods, seed oils. So to me, it's like, what do you care about? Your children and people and humans and our race? Or do you care about animals? And I don't understand, because now, don't kill that animal. Guess what? It's going to get sick and die anyway. I mean, I don't know. Like, I've seen humans die in far worse ways. I've seen humans go to and from the doctors, increasing their medication over 2 decades. They end up with Alzheimer's. They end up losing their dignity. They're going to the toilet over themselves. They end up in a home. Their loved ones disown them because they become a burden, and they die on their own in a miserable home. Now, what would you rather? A healthy human that dies old, young, and happy, or a sick human being that's eating the wrong diet because you want to save the animals, which we have saved? They're not being predated upon until the very last minute of their life when we use them to nourish ourselves. That's the only thing. That's the only way I could put it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much, Chris.
No worries. No offense to anyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's all good, and we are here to learn from each other. And you know, we are not imposing any viewpoint upon anyone. Like
no.
Everyone can decide whatever they want. Okay, Chris. Exactly. So please ask your question.
Thank you, thank you. It's just like a conversation, something that came up to my mind about that you have just said, which I find really interesting. It's about the indigenous people. I have been in contact with them for decades so far here in Colombia, and they don't see that as the breaking of a rule. On the contrary, they see that as a natural order. You know, we feed for animals with all due respect and all that stuff. It's not killing massively as in industries and factories do. It's different. It's to survive yourself. And they say, as I eat animals to survive myself, when I die, I'm going to nurture other animals from my very skin. So it's natural order. If they don't see a problem in that, and that reminds me of the movie Avatar, the first one.
Yes,
when he passed.
When I was thinking exactly the same.
It's interesting. When he passed the test, remember, the test was to kill with all due respect an animal. Because he needed the animal to nurture himself, but he did it all respectfully. And that's how indigenous people see the stuff. I just wanted to mention that. It's
if you allow it to be, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing because it gives back. Like that, I think there was another. I can't quote this exactly, but they said something like, "Energy is borrowed, right? And then we give it back." It's like we all have to give our energy back, and so we take this energy, we use it. We're healthy, we're happy, and we're grateful, and we respect the process. But then one day we have to give that energy back, and plants may grow, and fossil fuels, and all of these things, and so it's a constant energy. And these tribes, of course, they don't feel the way these a lot of vegan people feel, and the animal cruelty, because this is life. This is real life to them. They don't live in sophisticated society where we can prey on people's empathy and things like that. It's a very real truth, and it might hurt for people in this society in the West and certain cultures, but there's nothing, unfortunately, there's nothing sad about death. The sad thing is that people don't know that.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, Ru, you had a question. You better just unmute yourself and ask, because it's quite difficult for me to read from the screen.
Hello, Lee. This is Joyce. Hi. I have a question concerning the topic that was mentioned a lot now. I would say I follow the vegan diet, but I'm not a vegan, I'm a soul, and you are a soul too. So I can see that you really come from an honest point of view. I feel your honesty. But my question is, do you think it is possible that there is a connection between the violence amongst human beings and animals that are influenced by those vibrations and so become violent as well?
I don't believe so, no. I think that they serve two completely different purposes, in my opinion. I can't see it. What do you think? Do you feel like there's a link? Do you feel like you've discovered a link between those two? Or
I feel there is a link. And I was just recently looking at trust technique. Did you hear about that? Trust technique?
No, I don't think so.
So this is about the trust between human beings, but also between human beings and animals.
Right.
And I was just having this image, like the pictures, the films that I saw from this trust technique, is that people, by their non-thinking attitude, so they don't spread vibrations of negativity and waste, that through that they really heal traumatized animals. So I saw this video that this woman was lying in this meadow with a horse, and this horse became so peaceful. And then I can't imagine that there comes a point that she will kill it to eat it.
No, of course. That's going to be tricky there. It's going to be difficult there.
Yeah.
So
that's and I don't between souls we don't have to discuss who's right or who's wrong, you know. But it's just nice that we can put this next to each other, these visions.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting concept for sure. And I don't disagree with you, but I just can't help but prioritize over what is crucial for health overall. And what I found, you know, with so many different ailments, different autoimmune diseases and arthritis, so on and so forth, these things, they seem to be completely eradicated with an all-meat diet. And again, we're not forming relationships with these animals that we're consuming as well. That's another different aspect. So a lot of people, and I have been asked this before, you know, if this wasn't available to you, would you be willing to kill to eat what you eat? And actually now I genuinely would. Like, I look at it differently. My outlook's changed, but it doesn't mean we can't treat animals right during their life, you know, and that they can't have a healthy, happy life. And death, obviously, it's going to be sad. Like if you have to make that decision or you commit to doing something like that, especially if you've developed a relationship, like you know, if you have a dog, you've domesticated a dog, and you're not going to want to do anything bad to that. Like, but I don't know. It's a difficult one. That's a difficult one. But I don't believe that sort of it enhances violence or anything like that. I don't believe so. I mean, if anything, I've become like relaxed and calmer, and I care more. I'm actually focusing more on other people rather than just me the whole time. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then we had another few questions which I sent you prior to our interview. So how long did it take to fat adapt and transition on the carnivore diet? You mentioned that, maybe we can explore it a little bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously for those first 2 weeks, it was hard. There was no way I was even close. I think that genuinely it all came into place after 3 weeks, though. And I was in ketosis. See, the thing is, I was in ketosis 4 days into the diet, yet I didn't feel good. And so you can be you can be in ketosis, but not necessarily fat adapted. I think it took at least 3 weeks for me to become fat adapted, but I only feel like it's improved more because I think that I'm able to intake more fat. Whereas before I wasn't used to eating so much fat. I think it would have made me feel overwhelmed and things like that. So it took me about 4 months to completely rid all of my carbohydrate withdrawal symptoms. You know, I didn't crave chocolate. I didn't crave coffees and donuts and things like that. It took about 4 months though. And so I don't really know whether I would say that was the length of time it took to be completely fat adapted. Maybe that is the definition, or maybe it was in 3 weeks, you know. But I think this is different for everybody. I think it's different for how much fat you can intake, depending on how much fat you have been intaking before. Because some people, like, for example, this is why it's so important. And this is why I feel like I know that this is the natural human diet. If you don't consume enough animal fats, you will get gallbladder stones and sludge and dysfunction. Because if you have gallbladder issues, you have not been eating enough animal fats. Because that is what it is by definition. Like when you eat animal fats, you're basically telling your body like, oh, release some bile, and then it helps you digest the fat. Well, if you don't consume fats, that's sitting there and it becomes like underworked and redundant, and then it becomes inflammatory, and that's toxic, and then you get sick and you get gallstones and all these things. So a lot of people have lost their gallbladder and then they go carnivore, and then they're like, well, can I do this without gallbladder? Because I don't create bile. And it's like, yeah, you can, but just slowly increase the fats, very, very slowly, like more frequent meals, and don't go too crazy in the fat. So what happens eventually is that you've got another bile duct that kind of acts like a bile duct, like, you know, the gallbladder did. It stores bile. And so after a while, you can make that adaptation. But the reason why you had those problems in the first place was you weren't consuming enough fat. So I think it is important. We should be eating these things, and everybody's going to adapt differently depending on your previous health conditions or how much fat you have been having. It also depends on your gut health and your brain and things like that. But for me, I would say anywhere from 3 weeks to 4 months.
Okay, very interesting. And then the same person asks, as for today, how long has it been since you started your carnivore journey?
So it's been over a year now, just. It's about a year and 2 weeks, something like that. I just not long made a video about it being, you know, my first year, my carniversary, as they put it.
Yeah, so throughout that time, you haven't consumed any plants at all, or you still consumed a little bit?
Right, so in the first 30 days, I actually introduced coffee just to make it more, because to me, I was like, this is crazy, just meat, like this can't be right. No sweet, no veg, no fruit. And so what I did is I added coffee just to make it more interesting. I came off of coffee after the first 30 days. Another interesting thing, by the way, I used to get shakes. I was very caffeine sensitive. But when I went carnivore and I was drinking coffee every day, no shakes, no caffeine. So it's something to do with carbs there. I don't know what, or sodium or something. I don't know. But yeah. But also I would say it was like 2.5 months in, I did consume some blackberries, kind of like an experiment. They were local, they were seasonal, they grow wild here, just down the road and stuff like that. So yeah, I did consume some blackberries, and then decided I'm not doing this again, because basically it caused more problems with the digestive process. In the bag, there's those blackberries, there's parts of, you know, you feel it more. I regretted it a little bit, and I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm not doing this. And so since then, nothing. So if you think in the last year and 2 weeks, I've consumed, I don't know, a week's worth of coffee. Well, depends how much you drink, I suppose, but 2 or 3 coffees a day for 30 days. And then half a pint of blackberries. That's it. So, and for the last, you know, 10 months or whatever it is, I've consumed nothing but fatty red meat, some lamb, occasionally pork, occasionally some seafood, occasionally some raw dairy.
Okay. And do you think you will reintroduce any other foods in the future, or you do not have any intention to do that for now?
I have zero intention of doing that, just out of pure experience, off of what other people are saying when they experiment things. That seed oil, that I accidentally ingested when I was on that week's trip, that's another thing. Obviously, I felt that. I think that if I woke up one day and decided to have porridge oats with some bananas and apples, and then have a tea, and then for lunch have a whole grain sandwich with some salad and tomatoes and avocado, and then for dinner had spaghetti and don't know really, you know, beans, for example, I think I would just feel like hell. Honestly, I'm very sensitive to food, and some people don't have to worry. But funny thing is I know a few people that didn't have any complaints before. They went carnivore. A few months later, they reintroduced a plant, a carb, some grains. They felt miserable. And I genuinely believe that some people do not understand that they're suffering, because it's their norm, it's their reality. This is how they feel all the time. When you take that out and then you reintroduce it, it's like, right, see how you felt every day? You're not supposed to feel like that. You see that problem that you deal with, that, you know, that's not necessary. It's inappropriate. Like you don't need to be in that state. And so a lot of people that didn't even realize, and I have a neighbor down here that we went skiing together. This is where we went on this trip, and we were talking. He decided to adopt the diet, and he did it for about 6 weeks. And then he had a family do and went to a party, ate some food. He said it took him 3 days to recover and get back on track.
Wow.
And this was someone that looks great in health, no problems, doesn't take medication. He wasn't suffering, but you just get used to it. I think that's what it is. You just don't know. And so when you eradicate culprits, and I do believe every culprit's found in plants, which is why a red meat diet is the ultimate elimination diet, because you eliminate everything but meat. Why is it meat that stands last? Why is it that we eliminate everything else and we're left with just meat? Well, there's something to be said for that. That's not nothing. Maybe that is the most important part of anyone's diet, if they can help it.
Very interesting. And then the same person asks, many say that the restriction of carbs long-term can do damage. What are your thoughts about that?
Sure. So to me, damage comes from glycation or oxidation. Now, obviously, there are multiple ways of going about doing this, but carbs are made of glucose. All carbs are made of glucose. Obviously, you have non-starchy vegetables that will not really come into that. But if you're going to consume carbohydrates, then to me, that only glycates tissues and cells. That damages, for example, your LDL cholesterol. That's where you get atherosclerotic plaques and things like that, because you've now taken that. Your healthy cholesterol, nothing wrong with it, can be sky high. LDL total could be sky high, that's fine. But when you come along and you glycate and oxidate those cells, they're damaged. And then they're redundant, and the body doesn't know what to do. It's like, well, where do I go? Where do I belong? And so then it finds itself deposited in an arterial structure, and then that's the problem. So, and to me, I can't justify introducing any plants, any carbs, because every single plant, every single one has no less than 60 known human carcinogens. Not a lot of people know that. Mushrooms have 100. Brussels sprouts have 136. Look at the pack of tobacco. It says 70 known carcinogens. If you smoked an apricot, it would say 70 known carcinogens. Doesn't matter. It's not that you're just smoking it. They are the carcinogens found in tobacco. Tobacco is a plant. This applies to every single plant. You will not find any less than 60. So that's cancer. That's the carcinogens. Then plants have fiber. Fiber is inflammatory. It's indigestible, and it acts as an anti-nutrient. All carbs are made of glucose. That's sugar. Sugar's toxic. Glycate cells and tissues. And then oxidation can come from things like, most commonly, seed oils. So for me, if I introduced any plants back in, I'm only incurring damage. And another thing is that every single plant has anti-nutrients. Fiber's an anti-nutrient, sugar's an anti-nutrient, because fiber blocks the enzymatic relationship between the food and the lining in the gut wall. Glucose competes with vitamin C, so that's an anti-nutrient. You've got lectins, which bind to carbohydrates and things like that. Lectin binding, like plant proteins. Oxalates will rob you of magnesium, calcium, and things like that. Phytic acid, phytoestrogens, endocrine disruptors. There's not one plant that doesn't have some of these things in it. So to me, the long-term damage you can prevent by not, like, staying away from those. I think that it's a mistake to eat at least an abundance of carbohydrates. You shouldn't base your diet on it. So yeah, long-term, I can't see why that would be damaging, because to me it's the opposite. I can't see why. If that is true in some way, I just don't know. I don't know how that is yet, and we don't know why.
Okay, guys, we are approaching 2 hours. Do you have any more questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask if you have any. If not, we are going to wrap it up. Okay, Lee, so we're approaching the end of this interview. Now, tell us, like, if people are interested to be in touch with you or to get to know you better, or your philosophy of life or your approach, your experience, people who are in the same conditions as you were, depressed or have bowel problems, intestinal problems, how can they maybe get in touch with you or get to know you better? Like, how do you see that?
Sure. So as we were saying the other day, I deleted all my social media a little while back. To me, it was actually not good for my mental health. I was wasting a lot of time on there. I think that I was distracted a lot. So I'm exclusively on YouTube. So if you want to come find me, I'm on YouTube. The channel name is Kent Carnivore. So Kent, as in the borough in UK, the Garden of England. Kent Carnivore, as in carnivorous eating. And if you'd like, there is an email on there. Feel free to drop me an email, leecopus3@gmail.com. And yeah, just, even a message in one of the comments or something like that, under a video or something like that, or just feel free to pop by, see what you think of the content. I make lots of mini documentaries, quite user-friendly. easily digestible for people, all in one stop, about how to start, why, what about the history, what about this, what about that, you know, things found in plants, for example. And then I also have videos that pertain to my personal experience, my healing, and yeah, history of health and things like that. So you may find some of those useful.
Amazing. Yeah, so we're going to put the link to your YouTube channel below this video.
Lovely.
Guys,
Awesome.
so feel free to check it out. And below each video, Lee has his email, but we will also put it here if you don't mind. And yeah, and the intention is just to help people.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah.
Find this information useful, and each one is free to decide whatever suits them the best.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Lee. So thank you so much.
No worries, man. Appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye
bye.
See ya.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Ari.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. That was great.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Bye bye.